Episode 30 of our mega series, taking a look at all 30 athletes competing at this year's World's Strongest Man. We have looked at their story so far. We take a look at the events and let you know our thoughts on how we think they'll do on those events. And we rate every single athlete's overall chances for the competition. It's episode 30, so we're saving last year's champion for last, the one and only, the Albatross, Tom Stoltman.
Tom Stoltman's first international competition was the Junior World Championships in 2016. There he placed fourth behind Nick Hadge, Paul Smith and Ian Bibby. Later that same year he went on to do the adult version of the same competition, the Ultimate Strongman World Championships, and again he placed fourth, this time behind his big uncle Los, Gregor Szymanski and Mikhail Shivlikov. The following year he was invited to his first World's Strongest Man competition, but unfortunately was forced to withdraw from the competition after the first two events in the heat due to injury. Going into the 2018 Britain's Strongest Man, there was a lot of talk about Tom being a potential threat and possibly a bit too much pressure on those young shoulders, as he had his worst competition performance to date, placing 13th out of 13 athletes. This result was a real make or break situation for Tom, but he went away, worked hard, and not only became physically stronger, he became mentally tougher and a much better all-round athlete. And the following year he returned to Britain's Strongest Man and he placed third behind Graham Hicks and Adam Bishop. Later that same year he attended his second World's Strongest Man, this time making it through to the final and placing fifth, showing everyone his potential. At the 2020 World's Strongest Man, Tom found himself in a ridiculous group alongside Alexei Novikov, Maxime Boudreau and Trey Mitchell. Alexei won the group and Tom found himself in a stone-off with one of the best stone lifters in the world, Maxime. But he made it through to the final and won 3 events there, the keg toss, the log ladder and the Atlas stones, and placed second overall behind Alexei Novikov. In the 2021 World's Strongest Man, Tom found himself in the stone-off again, this time against English legend Mark Felix. Tom made it through the stone-off and into the final, where once again he won 3 of the events and most importantly the title, the World's Strongest Man.
So Tom is our defending champion, and what a story he's had. We've always seen the potential in Tom. He's, in that first Junior World Champions where he came fourth, alongside 3 names there that you mentioned that have all gone on to do very well, but none of them have excelled like Tom. And Tom didn't win that competition, so it shows youngsters out there, you don't need to win these competitions as a junior. You've got to keep progressing. And that's what Tom has done faster than anyone. His progression through the sport is incredible. His natural ability is phenomenal. It's very rare you see an athlete like Tom. Yeah. He's so perfectly built, naturally gifted in certain strongman events. And in the short career he's won a number of events against the absolute best there is. He has had little moments of weakness though. And, he had a poor performance at this year's Arnold's, which he seems very good at just moving forward.
Yeah.
We talked about the Britain's Strongest Man performance in 2018. There was so much pressure on Tom that year. So many people online were talking about it. Other athletes were talking about him. Everyone was bigging Tom up to go and at least get on the podium at Britain's that year. And I think the pressure got to him.
Yeah, I think so.
So many people would have found that very, very difficult to come back from. I personally think it was the best thing that happened to Tom because he went away and became mentally tough. And that is just as important as the physical capabilities. We've seen the physical capabilities for a while now. His ability to lift Atlas stones is just ridiculous. The way he throws things, his natural ability to move well at such a big body weight. And he has steadily made very impressive progress on his static strength and his weaknesses over the last few years. With all that being said, let's delve into the events that he's got to do at this year's competition and rate his chances.
First up then, an event we'd all expect to be very good for Tom, the loading race.
Yeah, Tom, despite being one of the heaviest and biggest athletes there is, moves exceptionally fast. It's as if he just needs to take a few strides and he's already reached the platform. Britain's strongest man, and for a number of years he's dominated the loading event. He's won the loading in many competitions before. He's got a huge wingspan, that's why he's called the Albatross. Yeah. And there's no objects that kind of faze him in the slightest. He just scoops them up. Couple of steps, he's at the platform. He's going to be very hard for anyone to beat on the loading, and it's important he gets a good start. He'll want to settle the nerves, but from seeing him, from speaking to him, from speaking to his coach, he's very, very confident coming into this World's Strongest Man.
And that's important for Tom. That the mental side is probably more important for him than it is for a lot of the other athletes.
I totally agree, and I think he's going to start this competition really strong.
So Tom never used to be known for his static strength per se, but my goodness, hasn't his deadlift and log improved? And obviously the next event is the deadlift ladder.
Yeah, his deadlift has improved tremendously. I mean, a couple of years back, you wouldn't have really been talking about Tom as a threat on a deadlift. If we just go back to Britain's Strongest Man this year, he was tied with Adam Bishop on the deadlift. We all know how good Adam is when it comes to deadlifting, and Tom's deadlift is world class now. I think it's actually improved a lot even from last year.
Yeah.
So that being said, he's in a good position going into this one. I've spoken about the transition between each implement. I think he's one of those athletes that's strong enough to pull a good amount of reps on these, hopefully get to the last bar, and I think he's going to be more than capable of picking up big points. He might not win it if someone's kind of a bit quicker and manages to get ahead of him.
Really good deadlifter in this group.
But I think Tom is going to score big points and put himself into a great position after day one of the competition.
Next is the car walk, an event that he never used to be that good at, but again, that's something he's shown a lot of improvement in as well.
Absolutely, you're taking everything I want to say about him and kind of putting it out there. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was never his best event originally, but the progress again over the last few years has been tremendous. I use that word a lot, but it really has. He was second in the deadlift. He was second at the World Tour Finals on the car walk. And if we go back to just last year's World's Strongest Man, he won the medley, which was the frame and yoke carry in the final. He has really made solid progress on these type of events. And again, I can't see him scoring badly. Maybe he's beatable, but 5 points on this type of event for him is perfect in the heats.
Next is the log lift for reps. And again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take your lines, but the World Tour final last year, he matched Luke Stoltman on, didn't he? Big brother.
Yeah, he did. When you think of how tall he is, how far the log has to travel and go up. And it was a slight weakness at one point. I mean, I would never say it was terrible, but it was a weakness at high level shows. Whereas now he's winning these type of events. World's Strongest Man 2020, he won the log medley. Last year at the World Tour Finals, like you said, joint with 9 reps with Luke Stoltman, his big brother. We know how good a log lifter Luke is. So again, I can't see him doing badly. He's got the conditioning, he's well prepared on these type of events, and he's got the history. He's backing it up in competition. That gives him confidence. He knows he's done it before in multiple situations. Tom, when he's confident, is unbelievable. And I think it's another event he's going to score big, if not maximum points on.
The Achilles heel, I'll say. The grip. Next is the wrecking ball hold.
And this is a very, very strange one. He's never put a big performance on a grip hold in a competition. In training, he's actually done very well with his grip. But I think it comes to that confidence. Sometimes when he lacks that confidence to do it in a competition, it just shows a little bit, and the history shows he's not performed well on these type of events. If we look at the Hercules hold from 2020's World's Strongest Man, he was pretty much last in the final on that event. I mean, he came 9th, but Hicksy had pulled out. So it's an event he's not performed well at. He needs a big performance, I think, on this to really put that pressure on the other big seeds and show that he's coming in this year with no weaknesses, because they'll all be looking for something. They'll all be trying to think, okay, he's got to have something that's going to kind of get to him. If he does well on the Hercules hold, they are all going to be shitting their pants.
Now, Tom has never made a final without having to do the stone off. So how do you think he'll do in a stone off?
It's quite incredible to think that Tom now, he's World's Strongest Man. He was second in 2020. He's actually never won his group at Worlds. I think this is the year to change that, though.
Yeah, I think so too.
But if he does find himself in a stone off, he is the last person anyone wants to see opposite them on a stone off. When it comes to the Atlas stones, I mean, we can talk about how great other stone lifters are. When it comes to the Atlas stones at World's Strongest Man, the set that they will be using, no one has ever done them faster than Tom. Not Brian Shaw, not Martins Lissis, not Thor.
Although, of course, this isn't about speed.
I totally understand that. But when you think of the confidence that he has on Atlas stones, the familiarization he has on these stones, and the fact that we've seen him lift 270 odd kilo stones now.
I forget now because it just goes into silly numbers.
Ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised if he could rep that last stone all day long if he needed to. He's the last person I'd want to be up against for sure.
And I can't see him going into the stones in any less than second place anyway.
No, I agree. Looking at the events, there is only one potential weakness.
Yeah.
I think if he can start the competition really well, he's going to... I actually think he'll win his group.
Yeah,
but he's got that backup of, okay, if it doesn't go perfectly,
I do the stones.
I've got the stones.
And it hasn't hindered him going into the final. He's done the stone off and then placed second and then placed first. So
when you're that good at an event, it's almost like a rest event, unless it's like a carrying event for distance or something. Yeah. But he can blast through stones so quickly, and sometimes the opponent's already beat.
Yeah.
Mark Felix last year put in a valiant effort against him, but I think Mark kind of knew, okay, I'm kind of giving up the ghost here because I've put in a good performance. I've done all 5 stones. That's enough. Showed I'm good. Time to go home. Because you know that Tom's going to keep putting that stone back over. It's very, very difficult. It would take a mentally supremely strong athlete to think, right, I'm going to battle with him.
It would take a Maxime or a Martins, but I just don't, or a Brian, but I don't see any of them being in the same groups as each other.
Absolutely. I think that's the issue, is those other incredible stone lifters will hopefully be spread out into different groups. What if we had all 4 in the same? That would be an interesting one. So with that being said, we think he's going to be in the final. Let's take a look at the events for the final.
And it starts with the Kanak medley, which is a box carry into a super yoke.
Yeah, and again, this type of event really suits him. Loading, we know he's good at. The yoke, he's very, very good at. We saw he won the frame and yoke last year at World's Strongest Man in the final.
Giants medley, I think.
Giants medley. He can start this competition very well, and I think if he does, puts a lot of pressure on the other guys. There are guys that could potentially beat him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people good at this type of event, but there's no reason he can't win this event. And certainly for me, should be looking for top 3. So last year on the deadlift for reps, he did drop a couple of points, but he wasn't far behind. Everyone was pretty close in terms of the ability. And Adam Bishop was the joint overall winner on the deadlift. He was joint with Adam on the deadlift at Britain's Strongest Man. His deadlift is making progress every time we see him. I would love to see Tom go for a max soon, because his max would have skyrocketed in terms of what he used to be able to lift.
I don't think he's done one since 2019 WUS.
I think that's absolutely right. And I'm convinced he's a 1,000-pound plus deadlifter now. Okay. So I think it's a strong event for him. There are a lot of deadlifters around that kind of mark, but I think he's going to get big points, certainly better than he did last year in the final.
The Max Flintstone barbell then, that's an interesting one. Do you think having such a totally new event in competition where Tom hasn't been tested and hasn't been able to compare himself is going to play on his mind? Not at all.
He trains with Luke Stoltman. He knows what's a good overhead.
He's got a good training partner, to be fair.
And from what I hear, in training, he's looking a bit better than Luke.
That doesn't surprise me though. When you look at their builds and everything, I would have thought Tom would have better mobility and flexibility to do the behind the neck jerk than Luke.
I've got some insider knowledge. Obviously, I'm friends with Dan Hipkiss, who is the coach to both the lads. He says they're both in the best shape they've ever been.
He says that every time.
Of course he does. But from what I hear and from what I can gather, this is an overhead that really suits Tom. Okay. And if you think, Tom's very good at the axle. So he's got great mobility for such a big guy. I think the power that he possesses just in his body, full stop, and he seems to be very confident about it again. So again, I think this could be a good event for him.
It's going to be exciting.
By no means am I saying he's going to get a banker on it.
No.
But I don't think the fact that he's not done it in competition affects him, because he's got such a great training partner to base his level off.
Yeah.
And if you're beating or matching someone like Luke overhead on anything, you know you're doing well.
The bus Paul then. Now, he's had a couple of pushing events recently at the Rogue Invitational and then last year's Worlds. It was last year, wasn't it?
Yes,
the Titans Turntable. And he won both of those.
Yeah, he's not done a truck pull of sorts in a long time. You know, when he was younger, he had the size, but maybe not quite the technique. I remember competing against him at UK's Strongest Man, and he just hadn't quite mastered movements. But the recent performances on similar events, the Titans Turntable and the Wheel of Pain, he has won both those events. And Tom is perfectly built for this type of event.
Yeah.
When you look at the history, big guys, once they master technique, know how to pull truck pulls. Terry Holland's one of the greatest of all time at pulling a truck. Brian Shaw, Hafthor Bjornsson, those three guys, all big guys. Tom is as big, if not bigger than them, and I can't see him performing badly.
No.
It's going to be in the heat of battle at this point. He knows it's going to be an important event for him because this is an event he will believe he can win. Training, again, from speaking to Dan, has gone very, very well on this, and I'm expecting a big performance. It's been a long time since we've seen him do a proper truck pull, or bus pull in this case. I know the progress is there. We've talked about the progress on his weaker events. This is going to be a strong event.
This next one is an event I can't wait to watch Tom do, the power stairs, because surely something like this is going to be perfect for Tom.
I have to agree. You know, we don't actually have any history of Tom doing power stairs in competition.
Look at the man.
But yes, he is the perfect build for this type of event. Very similar to Thor, you know, that kind of height, back strength. He's got good endurance. I cannot see it being a weakness.
No.
You know, he might not win it, but I think he's going to be top 3, top 4 at worst.
Yeah.
I really can't see him placing low on this type of event. As long as he's mentally strong, this is key for Tom. You know, we've seen occasionally, recently at the Arnolds this year, if things don't go right, he can drop his head and feel less confident. The fact is, the events at the Arnolds and the events at World's Strongest Man this year are extremely different.
Yeah.
These events really suit Tom. The events at the Arnolds were more of his weaker events. So, with that being said, I cannot see him doing badly.
And finally, of course, probably his favourite event, the Atlas Stones, with a bit of a run-in. I don't think that makes a difference for Tom, though.
It won't make a difference for Tom. Obviously, the record times that we've kind of looked at over the years are based on the stones just being in front of the platforms. So there is an element of moving with them. Stones are going to be slower in terms of the times we've seen over the last few years. But on the actual set that they're using, Tom has the fastest time when it's set close to the platforms. I've said how easily he moves on loading events. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him at all. The real question, if it comes down to Atlas Stones, is going to be pressure.
Yeah.
Coping with pressure. How close is Martins Lissis? How close is Brian Shaw? How close is Novikov? How close are the other athletes? What's happened before that? The fact is, Tom is an incredible stone lifter, but it's coming down to potentially winning your second World's Strongest Man. Last year, when it was about winning his first World's Strongest Man, he absolutely smashed the stones. It's very rare we see a bad performance from Tom in the stones, but we have seen the odd thing happen.
The mishap in Glasgow. Yeah.
The chances of that happening again
We'll
are very
blame
slim.
Evan for that.
I don't think we should blame Evan, but you know,
Let's just do it anyway.
there's always a chance of things going wrong on things like Atlas Stones, particularly when there's pressure, particularly in hot outdoor climates where tacky can become a bit slippy sometimes, sweat can get onto your arms. We saw that with Luke actually last year. Luke, normally a very good stone lifter, didn't perform well on them. So there are elements that can change the results. But all being well, normal circumstances, Tom is your man when it comes to Atlas Stones.
Well then, Loze, that all sounded very positive, especially the final events. So do we think Tom Stoltman is going to be the first man since Brian Shaw to be a multiple title winner?
I think on paper, now on paper things are very different than reality.
Of course.
I think on paper with these events, Tom is the number one athlete. His natural ability, his record on a lot of these events, the way his training has been going, and obviously this is just these 6 events. Let's get that, you know, in mind. I think he is the favourite. I think if Tom can perform at his best and doesn't let any external pressures get to him, he will be a 2-time World's Strongest Man. That's my thoughts. Now, there's lots of things that can happen to interrupt that. Martins Licis is an animal and a competitor.
And just good at everything.
And can keep that pressure on someone all the time. So he's going to have that to deal with as well as, you know, a whole host of other incredible athletes. But I don't see him dropping points. I think if he can maintain that, you know, mental strength, then he's going to be very, very hard to beat this year. And we could see a 2 times world's strongest man from Scotland.
Right. We've done it.
We've done it.
Yeah. So 30 episodes done. But now the hard work begins because World's Strongest Man starts on Tuesday. And we're going to be here every single day, aren't we, Lozzie? With our daily recap show and our live also. Thank you so much for joining us in this mini mega epic series. I think it's changed names several times now. Don't forget, guys, to like the video. Let us know in the comments, do you think Tom Stoltman can become 2-time world's strongest man? I don't think people are going to be betting against him, are they?
I think there's a few guys that are going to be in the battle. That's kind of
definitely. It's not going to be a runaway. He's going to have some really tough competition. But like
he's definitely got a chance, I feel. And I hope you know, like Liz said, I hope you've enjoyed these videos. Please go and like the rest of them, all 30 athletes. If you're not so sure about some of the athletes, might find a little bit of information on the videos. Obviously, the big names we are all excited to see. And it all kicks off very, very soon.